My son tricked me into a family meeting. When I arrived, lawyers were already there, ready to force me to sign everything over. When I refused to hand over the inheritance, they threatened me. I just smiled and said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You are a lot of people. Then I added calmly, funny thing is, I only brought one person too. But before I tell you who walked through that door and changed everything, let me take you back to the moment my own flesh and blood tried to bury me alive. If you have ever been betrayed by the people you sacrificed everything for, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps this old man know he is not alone. My name is Harrison Bennett. I am 70 years old. I built Bennett Steel from a single welding truck into an empire worth $52 million. 6 months ago, I buried my wife, Catherine. And last Sunday, my son tried to bury me. It started with a phone call at 6 in the morning. It was Preston, my son. His voice sounded frantic, shaky. Dad, you need to come to the office. Now. It is about Mom's estate papers. There is an emergency. I did not even drink my coffee. I threw on my coat, grabbed my car keys, and drove into the city. The streets were empty. It was Sunday after all. I thought maybe there was a tax issue, or maybe he had found a letter Catherine left behind. I was a fool. I arrived at the Bennett Steel Tower at 7 sharp. I took the private elevator to the 40th floor. The hallway was quiet. Too quiet. I expected to see Preston pacing, maybe holding a cup of coffee for me. Instead, the conference room door was closed. When I pushed it open, the air inside was stale, recycled cold. There was no coffee. There was no breakfast. And there was definitely no emergency about my late wife. Preston was sitting at the head of the long mahogany table. My table. The table where I had negotiated million-dollar contracts. But he was not alone. To his right sat Monica, my daughter-in-law. She was wearing sunglasses indoors. Her arms crossed, her lips painted a sharp, aggressive red, and flanking them were 2 men I had never seen before. Men in expensive gray suits with eyes like sharks. They did not stand up when I entered. They did not offer a hand. What is going on, Preston? I asked, my voice echoing in the large room. I looked at the empty chairs. Where is the emergency? Preston did not look me in the eye. He looked at a thick folder in front of him. Sit down, Dad. We need to talk. I did not sit. I stood my ground. I have stood before union leaders and hostile takeover artists. I was not going to be intimidated by the boy whose diapers I changed. I asked you a question, son. Preston took a deep breath like he was rehearsing a line. Dad, we are worried about you. You are spiraling. You are losing control. We have noticed the signs for months now. The forgetfulness, the aggression, the erratic spending. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Erratic spending. I live in the same house I bought in 1980. I drive a 5-year-old car. What are you talking about? Last week, Preston said, his voice gaining a little false confidence. You wire transferred $50,000 out of your personal savings. $50,000, Dad. You did not even tell me. You are burning through your liquid cash. We think you are being scammed, or worse, that you just forgot where the money went. My blood ran cold. I slammed my hand on the table. That money was for the public library, Preston. It was the donation for the Catherine Bennett Memorial Wing. Your mother wanted that library. I told you this 3 times last month. Preston shook his head, a look of fake pity plastered on his face. See? This is what I mean. You think you told me, but you did not. You are confusing dreams with reality, Dad. It is the early stages. We spoke to a doctor. One of the shark lawyers slid a paper across the table. It was a medical report. I glanced at it. It listed symptoms: confusion, paranoia, difficulty managing finances. It was signed by a doctor I had never met in my life. "This is garbage," I growled. "I am sound of mind. I just sold a subsidiary for $15 million cash last quarter. Do you think a senile old man could negotiate that deal?" "That is exactly why we are here," Mr. Bennett, the lawyer on the left, said. His voice was smooth, oily. "With assets totaling over $52 million, you are a target. Your son and his wife only want to protect you. This is an emergency conservatorship filing." Conservatorship? The word hung in the air like toxic smoke. They wanted to take my rights away. They wanted to treat me like a child. I looked at Monica. She finally took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were dry. There was no concern there, only calculation. "Just sign the papers, Harrison," she said. Her voice was sharp, impatient. "It gives Preston power of attorney over your accounts and your medical decisions. We will give you an allowance, $5,000 a month. You can stay in your house. We will hire a nurse to watch you. It is for your own good." A nurse to watch me. An allowance. From my own money. My hard-earned money. And if I refuse, I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper. Monica smiled, and it was the ugliest thing I have ever seen. She reached into her designer purse and pulled out a small digital recorder. She placed it on the table and pressed play. My own voice filled the room. It was distorted, angry. "I will burn this whole place to the ground. I do not care who gets hurt. I will destroy everything before I let them take it." The recording stopped. I remembered that moment. I was on a construction site 2 years ago. The contractors were using substandard steel. I was screaming about the building, about the project. But edited like this, out of context, it sounded like a violent threat from a deranged man threatening his family. "We have more," Monica said, leaning forward. "Hours of recordings, phone calls, arguments. We will submit this to the court tomorrow morning. We will paint a picture of a violent, unstable man who is a danger to himself and others. The judge will grant the emergency order immediately. You will be involuntarily committed to a facility for evaluation. 72 hours in a psych ward, Harrison. Do you think you can handle that at your age?" I looked at Preston. He was studying his fingernails, refusing to meet my gaze. "My son. The boy I taught to ride a bike. The man I promoted to CFO because I trusted him. He was letting his wife threaten to throw me in a mental institution. So this is it," I said. "This is the plan. You steal my company, you steal my money, and you lock me away." "It is not stealing." "Dad," Preston mumbled. "We are preserving the legacy. You are old. You are grieving. You are not thinking straight. Just sign the paper. Please. Do not make us do this the hard way." I looked at the document. It was all there. Total control. They would control my bank accounts, my real estate, my passport. I would have to ask my son for permission to buy a sandwich. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my fountain pen. It was a gift from Catherine for our 40th anniversary. Heavy. Gold nib. Expensive. Preston let out a breath he had been holding. Monica smirked, a victorious little twitch of her lips. The lawyers opened their briefcases, ready to notarize my surrender. I uncapped the pen. I leaned over the document. I could smell Preston's cologne. It was too strong, masking the stench of his betrayal. I lowered the pen to the signature line. Everyone in the room leaned in. Then, with all the strength left in my 70-year-old arm, I stabbed the pen down. Not to sign, but to strike. The gold nib tore through the paper, through the thick stack of lies, and jammed into the mahogany table. Ink bled out like black blood, staining the white document. I stood up. I looked straight at Preston. "You want a war, son," I said, my voice steady and cold. "You just started one. But remember this. I built this world you are trying to steal, and I know exactly how to tear it down. I turned my back on them. I heard Monica screeching, calling me a crazy old fool. I heard the lawyers shuffling, but I did not stop. I walked out of that conference room. I walked to the elevator. I pressed the button for the lobby. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. Pure white-hot rage. I thought the worst was over. I thought I had made my stand. But as the elevator descended 40 floors, I had no idea that the trap had already snapped shut. I walked to the parking garage, my heart pounding in my chest. I needed to get home. I needed to regroup. I reached the exit gate and tapped my credit card to pay the parking fee. Beep. Declined. I frowned. That card had a $50,000 limit. I tried my debit card. Beep. Declined. A cold sweat broke out on my neck. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Face ID recognized me. The app loaded. Account locked. Contact administrator. Preston. He had not waited for my signature. He had used the emergency clause in the company bylaws. He had claimed I was compromised. He had frozen everything. I was standing in a parking garage, 70 years old, with $40 in cash in my wallet, no access to my millions, and my own family hunting me down. I reversed the car, smashed through the wooden barrier arm of the parking garage, shattering my windshield, and drove out into the morning light. They wanted a crazy old man. They were about to get one. But they forgot one thing. I was not just an old man. I was Harrison Bennett, and I was not done yet. I drove east on the expressway, leaving the city skyline in my rearview mirror. The wind rushed through the shattered windshield of my sedan, scattering shards of safety glass onto the passenger seat like diamonds. I did not feel the cold. I felt only the burning heat of adrenaline coursing through my veins. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I reached for my phone again and dialed the direct line of Charles Sterling, my private banker, for over 30 years. He answered on the first ring, which was unusual for a Sunday morning. "Charles," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Why was my black card declined at the parking garage? Why am I locked out of my own app?" There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear Charles breathing. I could hear the click of a keyboard. "Harrison," he said finally, and his voice sounded tired. "I am so sorry. I tried to stop it. I tried to call you yesterday, but the order came through legal. It bypassed my desk entirely." "What order, Charles? Who frozen my money?" "It was Preston. He came in yesterday afternoon with a team of lawyers. He presented a durable power of attorney document, the one from 2014. He activated the emergency clause citing medical incapacity. He ordered a full freeze on all personal accounts pending an investigation into identity theft and cognitive decline. 2014. The memory hit me like a physical blow to the chest. I was in the cardiac unit awaiting a triple bypass surgery. I was 60 years old and terrified that I might not wake up. Preston had sat by my bedside, holding my hand, looking like the devoted son. He had brought the papers. "Just a precaution, Dad," he had said with tears in his eyes. "Just so I can pay the vendors and keep the lights on if you are under anesthesia for too long." I had signed it. I had signed my life away because I trusted him. And when I survived the surgery, when I walked out of that hospital, I forgot the document existed. I never revoked it. "He is using a 10-year-old document to steal my life," I roared at the phone. "Charles, you know I am sane. You know I just closed the deal on the shipyard last month. Unfreeze it. Now." "I cannot, Harrison." Charles sounded defeated. "Once the fraud alert is in the system and the medical concern is filed, federal banking regulations tie my hands. The investigation period is mandatory, minimum 30 days. Your accounts are locked. Your credit lines are suspended. Even your safety deposit box is sealed. If I move a single cent, I go to jail and the bank loses its license. You have to go to court. You have to get a judge to vacate the order." I hung up. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat. 30 days. In 30 days, they would have me committed. In 30 days, they would dismantle everything. I needed a base of operations. I needed a place they could not reach. I thought of the penthouse in the city, but the building manager reported to the company. Preston would be waiting there. Then I thought of the Hamptons, the estate on the cliffs, the house Catherine and I bought for our 25th anniversary. It was my personal property, not a company asset. It was our sanctuary, the place where we spent our summers walking on the beach and planning our old age. It was 2 hours away. I pressed the accelerator. The drive was a blur of gray highway and dark thoughts. I kept checking my rearview mirror, expecting to see black SUVs following me, but the road was empty. I arrived at the estate just as the sun was climbing high into the sky, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns of the neighborhood. I pulled up to the main gate. It was a massive wrought iron structure designed to look like old English lace. Catherine loved that gate. I rolled down the window and punched the code into the keypad. 0615. Catherine's birthday. The light on the keypad blinked red. Access denied. I frowned. Maybe I mistyped. My hands were shaking after all. I punched it in again slowly. 0615. Red light. Access denied. A cold stone settled in my stomach. I tried my backup code. The date I founded the company. Red light. I tried the master override code. Red light. He changed the codes. He had done this remotely. He had locked me out of my own sanctuary. I looked at the stone wall surrounding the property. It was 8 feet high, but I was not going to be stopped by masonry. I backed the car up and parked it on the grass shoulder, hidden behind a row of hedges. I walked to the side of the wall where an old oak tree grew close to the perimeter. I had trimmed that tree myself last summer, but I had left one lower branch. It took me 3 tries to get a grip. My shoulder ached, the one that still bothered me in the rain, but I pulled myself up. I scraped my expensive suit against the rough bark. I dropped down onto the soft grass on the other side. I was in. I ran to the house. The windows were dark. The shutters were drawn. I reached into my pocket for my key ring. I had a physical key for the front door, a heavy brass key that felt reassuringly solid in my hand. No amount of hacking or digital fraud could stop a physical key. I slid the key into the lock. It went in halfway and stopped. I pushed harder. It hit metal. It would not turn. I pulled it out and looked at the lock. The brass was shiny, new, not the tarnished antique finish Catherine had chosen. They had changed the locks. I stood on my own front porch, my hand hovering over the useless hardware. A wave of dizziness washed over me. This was not just a financial attack. This was an erasure. They were erasing my access to my own life. I walked around to the back patio. I grabbed one of the heavy cast iron patio chairs. If my key would not work, gravity would. I raised the chair, ready to smash the French doors leading to the kitchen. Freeze. Police. Drop the chair. The voice boomed from the side of the house. I spun around. 2 uniformed officers were standing by the corner, hands resting on their holsters. They were not the local sheriff deputies I played poker with. These were private security contractors hired to look like police, but they had badges and guns. I lowered the chair slowly. "I am Harrison Bennett," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "This is my house. I lost my keys." The officer on the left, a young man with a buzz cut, shook his head. "We received a silent alarm notification from the owner. We have a trespassing report. Identify yourself. I told you I am the owner. Check the deed. Check the records. I bought this land in 1995. The officer pulled out a tablet. He tapped the screen. "Address: 12 Ocean View Lane. Owner of record: Bennett Holdings LLC. Managing Director Preston Bennett. He looked up at me, his face hard. Sir, the property record shows this estate was transferred to a limited liability company 6 weeks ago. The authorized contact, Preston Bennett, has flagged this property as vacant and requested immediate police intervention for any unauthorized entry. You are trespassing. 6 weeks. My knees almost gave out. 6 weeks ago, Catherine had just died. I was in a fog of grief. Preston had brought me stacks of papers to sign, insurance forms, death certificates, estate transfers. Just standard paperwork, Dad, he had said. I had signed them all without reading. I had signed over my own home while my eyes were still swollen from crying for his mother. This is a mistake, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. My son tricked me. This is my home. My wife's garden is right there. Sir, the officer said, stepping closer. We do not want to use force on a senior citizen, but you need to leave the premises immediately. If you return, you will be arrested for breaking and entering. Please escort yourself to the public road. They marched me down the driveway. They opened the gate from their control panel. They watched me walk to my car. They stood there, arms crossed, guarding the fortress that I had built. I climbed into my car. I sat there for a moment staring at the closed gate. I had no money. I had no home. I had no access to my accounts. And then the realization hit me. It was colder and sharper than the wind blowing through my broken windshield. This was not a sudden decision. Preston did not wake up yesterday and decide to do this. To change the deed takes weeks. To set up the LLC takes time. To organize the medical reports and the lawyers takes planning. He had been planning this while Catherine was in hospice. He had been setting up the shell companies while I was holding her hand as she took her last breath. He had been preparing to erase me while I was mourning the love of my life. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked old, tired, defeated. That is what they wanted to see. That is what they expected. A sad old man who would curl up and die. I started the engine. The roar of the motor felt good. It felt alive. I reached under the passenger seat and pulled out an old rugged Nokia phone. A burner. I kept it for emergencies on construction sites back in the 90s. I charged it once a year. I prayed it still had battery. It flickered to life. 1 bar of battery. I dialed a number I had memorized 20 years ago. A number I swore I would never use unless the world was ending. It rang once, twice. Yeah, a female voice answered. Sharp, suspicious. Sarah, I said. It is Harrison. They took everything. There was a pause. Then the voice softened just a fraction, but the steel was still there. Where are you, Harrison? I am on the street. I have $40 and a half tank of gas. Get to the old warehouse in Queens, she said. The one off the grid. Do not use your credit cards. Do not use your main phone. Harrison. Yes. Are you ready to go to war? I looked back at the house one last time. I am not just ready, Sarah, I said. I am already fighting. I hung up and put the car in gear. They thought they had trapped a helpless animal. They were about to find out they had locked themselves in a cage with a wolf. The neon sign of the Starlight Motel buzzed with a dying flicker outside my window, casting long, intermittent shadows across the stained carpet. I sat on the edge of the mattress that smelled of bleach and despair, counting the crumpled bills in my wallet for the 10th time. $214. That was the sum total of my liquid assets. Yesterday, I was Harrison Bennett, the titan of industry, with $52 million in assets and a black card that could buy a small island. Today, I was an old man in a cheap motel room, hiding from his own children. I needed a lifeline. I needed to believe that not everyone I raised had turned into a monster. My hand trembled as I picked up the room phone and dialed Victoria's number. My daughter. My little girl who used to cry when she stepped on a bug. She was soft. She was not like Preston. She had always been the one with the heart. She answered on the second ring. "Hello?" "Vicky," I said, and my voice cracked. "It is Dad. Listen to me, honey. Preston has lost his mind. He has locked me out of the accounts. He has taken the house. I need you to talk to him. I need you to tell the lawyers that I am sane." There was a silence on the other end, a heavy, guilty silence that told me everything I needed to know before she even spoke a word. "Daddy," she finally said, and her voice sounded thick like she had been rehearsing this speech. "Preston is just trying to help you. We are all trying to help you." "Help me," I whispered. "He left me on the street with $40. He stole my home, Victoria." "He did not steal it," she said, and her tone hardened just a fraction. "He is protecting the estate. We saw the medical reports, Dad. The doctor said you are declining fast. You are imagining things. Paranoia is a symptom." "I am not paranoid," I shouted, gripping the receiver. "I am being persecuted. By my own blood. Victoria, please. I am at a motel on the edge of town. I need cash. I need a lawyer. Just come pick me up." "I cannot do that," she said. "Preston says we cannot enable your episodes. You need to go to the facility, Dad. It is a nice place. They have a garden. You need rest. You are tired." "I am not tired," I said, my anger rising like bile. "I am wide alive. And I know about Jason's gambling debt, Victoria. Is that what Preston promised you? Did he promise to pay off your husband's bookie if you signed the affidavit against me?" The silence on the line was absolute. I had hit the nerve. "Do not call here again until you are ready to check into the facility," she hissed, and then the line went dead. I sat there listening to the dial tone. It sounded like the flatline of my family life. My daughter had just sold me out to save her husband's kneecaps. I was truly alone. I stood up and splashed cold water on my face in the cracked sink. I looked at the man in the mirror. Gray stubble, red-rimmed eyes. A wrinkled suit that cost $3,000 but looked like garbage now. They wanted me to be a helpless old man. They wanted me to curl up in this motel room and wait for the men in white coats to come and take me away. Not today. I walked out of the motel, leaving the key on the desk. I did not take my car. The sedan was modern. It had GPS, it had OnStar. Preston could track it from his laptop. I left it parked right there in the lot, a decoy for his goons to find. I walked to the corner and hailed a yellow taxi. The driver looked at me with suspicion, but stopped when he saw the cash in my hand. "Where to?" he grunted. "The industrial park," I said. 4th Street. The old sector. We drove in silence through the waking city. The skyline of steel and glass that I had helped build mocked me from the distance. We headed away from the money, away from the power, into the grit and the grime of the old district. This was where Bennett Steel began. Before the skyscrapers, before the hedge funds, before the betrayal. The taxi dropped me off in front of a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. The driver looked at the desolate surroundings. "You sure about this, buddy? This place looks abandoned." "I am sure," I said, handing him a 50. "Keep the change." I stood before the gate of Warehouse 4. It was a rusted corrugated metal coffin surrounded by weeds that had grown waist-high. Preston hated this place. He called it an eyesore. He begged me every quarter to sell the land for redevelopment. He was too refined for the dirt, too sophisticated for the rust. That arrogance was his blind spot. He never came here. He probably forgot we still owned the deed. The padlock on the side gate was fused shut by 20 years of oxidation. I did not have a key. I did not need one. I walked around the perimeter to the back alley where the loading dock used to be. The brickwork was crumbling. I found a loose piece of iron rebar in the rubble, a heavy rusted rod about 2 feet long. I wedged the rebar into the gap between the service door and the frame. I braced my foot against the wall. I am 70 years old, and my back screams when I lift anything heavier than a golf bag. But today I felt the strength of a man half my age. It was the strength of survival. I heaved. The wood groaned. The metal screeched in protest. With a loud crack, the frame splintered and the door popped open, spilling darkness out into the alley. I stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and the smell of ancient grease and motor oil. It smelled like memory. Shafts of sunlight pierced through the holes in the roof, illuminating millions of dust motes dancing in the dead air. And there she was, sitting in the center of the vast empty floor, covered in a thick gray blanket of dust, but still magnificent. My 1998 Ford F-150, the workhorse. The truck I drove when I landed my first 6-figure contract. The truck I drove when I laid the foundation for the tower Preston now sat in. I walked over to her, my footsteps echoing in the silence. I wiped a layer of dust from the driver's side window. The red paint underneath was dull but solid. I tried the door handle. It was stiff, but it clicked open. The interior smelled of old leather and stale coffee. I climbed in. The seat springs creaked a familiar welcome. I did not put the key in the ignition yet. I reached down under the bench seat, fumbling in the darkness. My fingers brushed against old invoices and cobwebs until they hit cold, hard metal. I pulled it out. A heavy steel ammo box. I had greased the latch years ago so it wouldn't rust. I flipped it open. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were bundles of cash. $50,000 in non-sequential bills. And beneath the cash, the heavy, reassuring glint of gold. 20 South African Krugerrands. I had placed this here in 1999. We were facing a lawsuit that threatened to bankrupt the company. I was terrified of losing everything, so I created a doomsday fund. A way to start over if the world burned down. We won the lawsuit, and the company grew, and I became rich. I forgot about the box. I forgot about the truck. But deep down, some part of me must have known that this day would come, that the empire built on steel could be stolen by paper. I placed the box on the passenger seat. I patted the dashboard. I inserted the key into the ignition. I prayed to whatever God watches over fathers who have been fools. I turned the key. The starter whined. Once, twice. The engine sputtered, coughing out decades of silence. "Come on, old girl," I whispered. "Do not let me down." I turned it again and pumped the gas pedal. With a roar that shook the dust from the rafters, the V8 engine exploded to life. It was loud. It was unrefined. It was angry. The whole truck vibrated with raw power. It was the sound of a beast waking up from a long hibernation. I shifted the gear into reverse. The transmission clunked heavily, but engaged. I backed the truck up, smashing through the rotted wooden doors of the loading bay. Wood splintered and flew everywhere as I burst out into the sunlight. I was free. I had wheels. I had money. I had gold. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out the burner phone, an old Nokia brick that I kept charged for emergencies. I powered it on. The screen glowed green, battery full, signal strong. I dialed a number I had memorized 15 years ago, a number belonging to the most dangerous woman I knew. It rang 3 times. "Yeah." A woman's voice answered. Sharp, suspicious, no greeting. "Sarah," I said, shouting over the roar of the engine. "It is Harrison Bennett." There was a pause. I could hear the flick of a lighter and a long exhale. "Harrison," she said, and her voice dropped an octave. "I saw the filing on the docket this morning. Emergency conservatorship. They move fast. They took everything, Sarah. My accounts, my house, my dignity." I told you this would happen, she said. I told you that boy was a viper when he was 25. You didn't listen. I am listening now, I said. I am awake now. Where are you? I am in the wind. I have a clean vehicle. I have 50,000 cash and a bag of gold. And I have the documents from 1995, the ones I never showed anyone. I could hear her smile through the phone. It was a cold, terrifying sound. You kept the leverage, she asked. I did. Meet me at the diner on 9th Avenue, the one with the grease traps. Come alone, Harrison, and bring the gold. We have work to do. I hung up the phone and threw it onto the seat next to the ammo box. I revved the engine and peeled out of the lot, leaving a cloud of dust and smoke behind me. Preston thought he had taken my power because he took my credit cards. He forgot that I built this fortune with a hammer and a truck. He wanted a war with a senile old man. He was about to find out that the old man still had teeth. Sharp ones. The tires of my dusty Ford truck crunched over the gravel lot of a roadside diner that looked like it had not seen a fresh coat of paint since the Reagan administration. It was the kind of place where truck drivers and insomniacs went to disappear over plates of greasy eggs. I killed the engine, and the beast shuddered to a halt. I grabbed the ammo box with my left hand and the burner phone with my right. For a moment I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. The suit was ruined. The tie was gone. The eyes staring back were hard and cold. I looked less like a CEO and more like a man on the run, which I suppose was exactly what I was. Inside, the air smelled of bacon grease and stale coffee. I scanned the booths. She was in the back corner facing the door. Sarah Jenkins. She had not changed much in 15 years. Her hair was cut in a sharp bob that framed a face made of angles and intelligence. She wore a black leather jacket over a silk blouse, a contrast that screamed danger and class all at once. She was typing furiously on a laptop that looked like it cost more than the building we were sitting in. I slid into the booth opposite her. She did not look up immediately. Her fingers flew across the keys, executing commands that were likely illegal, or at least highly intrusive. You look like hell, Harrison, she said without stopping. I feel like hell, I replied, placing the heavy steel box on the table between us. I pushed it toward her. It made a dull thud against the laminate. Sarah stopped typing. She looked at the box, then up at me. Her eyes were dark and unreadable. Is that the retainer? It is 50,000 in cash and 20 Krugerrands, I said. It is all I have access to right now. Preston locked the rest. She smirked a genuine expression that softened her features for a fleeting second. You saved my father from bankruptcy when everyone else walked away, Harrison. You paid off his debts and let him keep his dignity. You do not need to pay me. This is pro bono. But keep the gold. We might need bribes later. She spun the laptop around so I could see the screen. It was filled with spreadsheets, graphs, and lines of code that moved too fast for me to follow. I have been digging into Bennett Steel since you called, she said, her voice dropping to a professional whisper. I pulled the public filings, the quarterly reports, and I ran a few algorithms on the vendor payments. And I asked, bracing myself, it is a mess, Harrison. A catastrophic mess. That is impossible, I said. We posted record profits last quarter. I saw the sheets. We are expanding into 3 new states. Sarah shook her head. You saw what they wanted you to see. Look here. She pointed a manicured finger at a column of red numbers. These are the operating costs for the expansion. They are inflated by 300%. And here, these are vendor payments to shell companies that were created less than 6 months ago. I squinted at the screen. The names were generic. Apex Logistics, Zenith Supply, Global Solutions. I do not know these vendors, I murmured. Of course you do not. They do not exist. But the money going to them does. Sarah leaned in her eyes, locking onto mine. Harrison, your son is not just trying to steal your inheritance because he is greedy. That is what I thought at first too. the spoiled brat wanting the daddy's money. But it is worse than that. How much worse? He is desperate. I frowned. Desperate. Why? Sarah tapped the screen again, highlighting a graph that showed a steep, terrifying decline. Bennett Steel is bleeding money, Harrison. It is hemorrhaging cash. The expansion was a lie. A cover-up. The company is operating at a massive deficit. Based on these burn rates, payroll will bounce in 3 weeks. The vendors will stop shipping in 4. I felt the blood drain from my face. My company, the empire I built with sweat and blood, it was dying. He needs your $52 million not to buy yachts or villas, Sarah said, her voice razor-sharp. He needs it to plug the hole. He is trying to inject your personal liquidity into the company to hide the losses before the IRS audit next month. If he does not get your money, Bennett Steel collapses in 30 days. 30 days. The realization hit me like a physical blow. That was why they were rushing. That was why they needed the emergency conservatorship. They did not just want to control me. They needed to liquidate me. I was just a savings account. They needed to break open to save their own skins. He lied to me, I whispered. He stood in my office and told me we were strong. He lied to everyone, Sarah said, closing the laptop with a snap. But here is the kicker. If he uses your money to cover these losses, he is committing securities fraud. And since the money is coming from your personal accounts while you are still technically the chairman, if the feds look into this, guess who goes to prison? Me. Bingo. You are the Patsy Harrison. He is setting you up to take the fall for the collapse. He gets to claim he was just following orders from his senile father who mismanaged the funds. He walks away clean. You die in a federal penitentiary. I sat back against the cracked vinyl of the booth. The waitress came by and poured coffee into a thick white mug. I stared at the black liquid. My son. My own son was willing to send me to prison to cover his incompetence. So what do we do? I asked, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. Sarah took a sip of her coffee. She looked at me over the rim of the mug. Her eyes were no longer soft. They were the eyes of a predator. We kill the company, she said. What? We let it die. We expose the fraud. We cut off the cash flow. We stop him from getting your $52 million. And we watch it burn. But that is my legacy, I protested. That is my life's work. Your legacy is already dead, Harrison, she said brutally. Preston killed it the moment he started cooking the books. The only thing left to save is your name and your freedom. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. I will help you, Harrison. I will use every tool in my forensic arsenal. I will track every scent. I will find where he buried the bodies. I will dismantle his lies brick by brick. But I have one condition. Anything. No sentiment, she said. No mercy. We are going to dissect his life. We are going to expose every dirty secret, every lie, every weakness. And when he comes crawling to you begging for forgiveness, you have to be willing to crush him. I thought of Preston's face in the conference room. I thought of Monica's smirk. I thought of the lock on my front door. I thought of the boy I used to hold on my shoulders at the beach. That boy was gone. The man who replaced him was a stranger, a dangerous stranger. I looked at Sarah. I looked at the ammo box full of cash. I looked at the ruins of my life. Do it, I said. No mercy. Sarah smiled. It was a terrifying smile. Good. Drink your coffee, Harrison. We have a lot of work to do. First, we need to find out exactly where that money is bleeding to, and I think I know who can tell us. Who? Your daughter, she said. Victoria. Victoria betrayed me, I said bitterly. She sided with him. Everyone has a price, Sarah said, opening her laptop again. We just need to find out what hers was. And looking at her husband's credit report, I think I found a crack in the armor. She turned the screen to me again. It showed a credit report for Jason Victoria's husband. It was a sea of red ink. Delinquencies, collections, and one massive outstanding loan to a shell company that looked suspiciously like a front for a loan shark. She did not betray you because she hates you, Sarah said. She betrayed you because she is scared. Scared of what? Of having her husband's legs broken. I looked at the screen. The pieces were falling into place. It was a conspiracy of the desperate. Preston was drowning. Victoria was drowning, and they decided to use my body as a raft. Let us go find my daughter, I said, standing up. Sarah nodded and closed the laptop. She grabbed her leather jacket. You drive, she said. My car is too conspicuous for where we are going. We walked out into the bright morning sun. The Ford truck waited for us like a loyal dog. I climbed in and unlocked the passenger door for the only person in the world who was on my side. 30 days. We had 30 days to save my life and destroy my son's house of cards. The clock was ticking, but for the first time since Sunday morning, I did not feel like a victim. I felt like the CEO, and I was about to execute the most hostile takeover in history. The engine of the Ford truck idled with a low rumble in the alleyway behind the Blue Note, a dive bar on the edge of the industrial district. Sarah sat in the passenger seat, adjusting the dials on a piece of equipment that looked like something out of a spy movie. It was a parabolic microphone aimed through the cracked window at a booth near the back exit of the bar. I sat in the driver's seat, wearing a pair of heavy noise-canceling headphones, my hands gripping the steering wheel. We had tracked Victoria here using the location data from her shared family cloud account, which she had foolishly forgotten to remove me from before the betrayal. She was meeting Jason, her husband, my son-in-law, the man I had never fully trusted but had tolerated for her sake. The headphones crackled with static. Then the sounds of the bar filtered in. The clinking of glass, the low hum of a jukebox playing an old country song, and then voices. Clear as a bell. I closed my eyes and listened. I cannot do this anymore, Vic. Jason's voice was high-pitched, tight with panic. He sounded like a cornered animal. They called me again this morning. They said if I do not have the $500,000 by Friday noon, they are going to start taking fingers. First the pinky, then the ring finger. My eyes snapped open. $500,000. I knew Jason liked to gamble. I knew he played poker on Tuesdays. But $500,000. That was not a game. That was a death sentence. Victoria's voice came through next. It was soothing, but underlined with a terrible exhaustion. Keep your voice down, Jason. People are looking. I told you it is handled. We just need to wait a few more days. We do not have a few days, Jason hissed. We have 48 hours. Your brother said the court order would be done by yesterday. Where is the money? It is complicated, Victoria said. Dad fought back. He did not sign. He ran. Preston is tracking him down now. He froze the accounts, but we cannot liquidate the assets until the judge grants the permanent conservatorship. We need to find him and force him to sign the voluntary transfer. I felt a physical pain in my chest, sharp and cold. They were discussing my life, my freedom, and my hard-earned legacy as if it were simply a logistical hurdle to clearing a gambling debt. So find him, Jason snapped. You said Preston promised us $2 million from the estate. $2 million, Vic. That pays off the bookie and leaves us with enough to start over. We can move to Florida. We can buy that boat. But we need that money now. I leaned back against the headrest, tears stinging my eyes. $2 million. That was the price of my daughter's loyalty. That was the price of her love. She had sold her father to a mental institution to cover the mistakes of a man who could not walk past a blackjack table without losing his soul. I listened as Victoria sighed. Her voice trembled. I hate this, Jason. I hate what we are doing. Did you see his face in that conference room? He looked at me like I was a stranger. He is my dad. He carried me on his shoulders. He paid for my wedding. And now we are hunting him like an animal. We do not have a choice, Jason said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. Do you want to be a widow? Do you want them to come for the house? Do you want them to come for you? Because these guys do not play nice. If I do not pay, they will hurt you too. We have to do this. Preston is right. The old man is done. He had his time. Now it is our turn to survive. Our turn to survive. I took off the headphones. The silence in the truck was deafening. Sarah was looking at me, her expression unreadable, but her eyes soft with pity. She had heard everything, too. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I felt old. Older than I had ever felt in my life. The betrayal in the conference room had been shocking, but this was different. This was heartbreaking. My daughter was not evil. She was desperate. She was terrified. She was weak. And she had chosen her husband's safety over her father's life. It is a tragedy, Sarah said softly, but it is also an opportunity. I looked at her. What do you mean? She is the weak link, Harrison. Preston is a sociopath. He enjoys this. He feels entitled to your money. But Victoria, she is drowning. She is driven by fear, not malice. And fear makes people irrational. Fear makes people make mistakes. I looked out the window at the brick wall of the bar. I imagined Victoria sitting in that booth holding the hand of a man who had ruined her life, trying to convince herself that destroying me was the only way out. She thinks Preston is going to give her $2 million, I said quietly. Sarah scoffed. Preston is not going to give her a dime. Once he has control, he will cut her loose. He needs that money to plug the holes in the company. He will let Jason get his legs broken before he shares the loot. I know, I said. And deep down she knows it too. She is just too scared to admit it. So what do we do? Sarah asked. We break her, I said. We use her fear against her. We make her choose. Not between me and Jason, but between the lie she is living and the truth that can save her. I picked up the burner phone. My fingers hovered over the keypad. I knew what I had to do, but it felt like cutting off my own arm. I had to manipulate my daughter. I had to play on her desperation. I had to become the thing they accused me of being. Calculating. Cold. I typed the message. Victoria, I know you are scared. I know about Jason. I know about the Friday deadline. I paused. I watched the cursor blink. I added the hook. I want to help you. I am tired of running. I am willing to sign everything over. But I will only deal with you. Not Preston. Not Monica. Just you. Meet me at Washington Square Park in 1 hour. Come alone. If I see anyone else, the deal is off and I disappear forever. I pressed send. I put the headphones back on. I waited. Inside the bar, I heard a phone buzz on the table. What is it? Jason asked. Victoria's breath hitched. It is Dad. Read it, Jason demanded. There was a long silence. I could hear Victoria breathing fast, shallow breaths. He wants to meet, she whispered. He says he is ready to sign. He says he is tired. Thank God, Jason said. Thank God. Where? Washington Square Park. In an hour. He says I have to come alone. Then go, Jason said. Go and get that signature. Do whatever you have to do, cry, beg, lie. Just get the pen on the paper. This is our ticket out, Vic. This is our life. But Preston... Victoria stammered. Preston said we should call him immediately if we hear from Dad. He said Dad is dangerous. Screw Preston, Jason snapped. If you call Preston, he will bring his lawyers and his ego, and he will scare the old man off. And if the old man runs again, we are dead. We miss the deadline. You have to do this yourself. You get the signature, then we take it to Preston and demand our cut. I heard the sound of sliding vinyl. Victoria was getting up. Okay, she said. Okay, I will go. I will bring the papers. I took off the headphones and looked at Sarah. She is coming, I said. Sarah nodded. She reached into the back seat and pulled out a small black file folder. This contains the evidence of Preston's shell companies, she said, and the proof that Monica has already transferred the deed of your Hamptons house into a trust controlled by her mother. I took the folder. It felt heavy. Show her this, Sarah said. Show her that she is not a partner in this heist. Show her that she is just another victim. Break the illusion, Harrison. It is the only way to save her. I started the engine of the truck. Washington Square Park, I said. We drove through the city streets. I felt a strange calm settle over me. The grief was gone, replaced by a cold clarity. I was about to hurt my daughter. I was about to shatter her world. But it was the only way to pull her out of the wreckage before the ship went down completely. I parked the truck 3 blocks away from the park. Sarah stayed in the vehicle, monitoring the surroundings with her laptop. Good luck, Harrison, she said. Remember, no sentiment. She betrayed you. She would have let them lock you up. I know, I said. The afternoon sun cast long, stretching shadows across the pavement of the park as I sat on a weathered wooden bench near the duck pond. I had chosen this spot carefully. It was open enough to be seen, but secluded enough for a private conversation. I checked my watch. It was a reflex from my old life because time no longer meant money. Time now meant survival. I hunched my shoulders forward and let my hands rest on my knees, deliberately, allowing them to tremble. If they wanted a broken old man, I would give them the performance of a lifetime. From the corner of my eye, I spotted a black luxury SUV idling about 50 yards away near the park entrance. The windows were tinted dark enough to hide the occupant, but I knew the license plate. It was Monica's car. My daughter-in-law was watching. She was the shark circling the waters, waiting for the scent of blood. She did not trust Victoria to handle this alone. That was good. Her lack of trust was a weakness I could exploit. Victoria approached from the walking path. She looked impeccable in a beige trench coat and designer sunglasses, but her stride was uneven. She was nervous. As she got closer, I saw the strain lines around her mouth and the way she clutched her handbag with white-knuckled intensity. She was terrified not for me, but for the deadline hanging over her husband's head. "Dad," she called out softly. I looked up slowly, blinking as if I was struggling to focus. I let my mouth hang open slightly. "Vicky," I said, my voice raspy and weak. "Is that you, honey? I thought you were your mother for a second." She sat down next to me, keeping a deliberate distance. She smelled of expensive perfume and fear. "It is me, Dad," she said, forcing a smile that did not reach her eyes. "You look tired. Have you been sleeping? You should not be out here all alone. It is dangerous." "I am just resting," I mumbled, rubbing my hands together as if I were cold. "I just needed some fresh air." The house was so quiet. "They changed the locks, Vicky." "Why did they change the locks?" She reached into her bag. I saw her hand brush against her chest, adjusting something under her coat. A microphone. Preston and Monica were listening. They wanted a recording of my confession. They wanted proof of my incompetence. "Preston is fixing the locks, Dad," she lied smoothly. "He is just trying to keep you safe. You have been forgetting things. You have been wandering. We just want to take care of you. Look, I brought the papers, the ones you forgot to sign on Sunday." She pulled the thick document out of her bag. "The conservatorship agreement. The death warrant for my freedom. If you sign this, we can take you to a nice place, she said, her voice taking on a soothing, manipulative tone. A place with doctors and nurses. And Preston will handle all the bills. You won't have to worry about money ever again. I stared at the paper. I let my hand hover over it, shaking visibly. I do not know, Vicky, I stammered. I promised your mother I would protect the company. Mom is gone, Dad, she said, and I heard the impatience bleeding into her voice. You have to let go. You are not capable anymore. Just sign it. Do it for us. Do it for me. I looked at the black SUV in the distance. I could imagine Monica inside, leaning forward, grinning, listening to the audio feed, thinking she had won. I looked back at my daughter. She held the pen out to me. Her hand was steady, but her eyes were pleading. She needed this signature to save her husband from the loan sharks. She was willing to sacrifice me to do it. I took the pen. I leaned over the paper. I felt Victoria relax beside me. She exhaled a breath she had been holding. Then I dropped the pen. It clattered onto the pavement. Oh, clumsy me, I said. I leaned down to pick it up. Victoria leaned down with me. Let me get it, Dad, she said. Our heads were inches apart. The microphone under her coat would not pick up a whisper at this range if I spoke directly into her ear. The black SUV was too far away to see my expression change. I dropped the mask. The shaking stopped. My eyes cleared. I grabbed her wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to freeze her. I know about the $500,000, Victoria. I whispered, my voice sharp and cold as steel. She stiffened. She tried to pull away, but I held on. I know Jason is going to lose his fingers on Friday. I continued, my words rapid and precise. I know Preston promised you $2 million to get this signature. I know you are wearing a wire right now, and Monica is sitting in that black car listening to us. Her eyes went wide with terror. She opened her mouth to speak, to deny it, but I cut her off. Do not say a word, I hissed. Just listen. You think you are saving your husband. You think Preston is going to pay you. You are a fool. I leaned even closer until my lips were brushing her ear. I ran a forensic audit on the company this morning, Victoria. Preston does not have the money. He is broke. He is stealing from the pension fund to pay off shell companies. But here is the part you do not know. Monica moved the deed to the Hamptons estate 3 weeks ago. It is not in the family trust. She transferred it to her mother in Florida. Victoria gasped, a small, choked sound that the microphone might have picked up as a cough. She is setting up her escape plan, I whispered. When the FBI comes, and they are coming, Victoria Preston is going down, and Monica is going to be sitting on a beach in Boca Raton with the only assets left. You are not going to get $2 million. You are not going to get a single dime. You are going to get a bankrupt husband with broken legs and a brother in federal prison. I let go of her wrist. I sat up. I picked up the pen and handed it back to her. I cannot sign this today, Vicky, I said loudly, my voice returning to the wavering tone of a senile old man. I need to think. My head hurts. I think I need to go lie down. Victoria sat there frozen. Her face was pale as a sheet. She looked at the document in her lap, then at the black SUV, then at me. The seed was planted. The doubt was rooting in her mind, spreading like a virus. She realized she was not a partner in this conspiracy. She was a pawn. Dad, she whispered, but she did not know what else to say. I stood up slowly, leaning on the bench for support. Tell Preston I will come to the meeting on Friday, I said loudly enough for the wire to catch it. I will bring my reading glasses. We can talk then. I patted her on the shoulder. It was not a gesture of affection. It was a warning. I turned and walked away. I did not look back at the black SUV. I walked with a shuffle until I turned the corner and was out of sight. Then I straightened my back. I checked my watch. Step 1 was complete. I had fractured their alliance. Now I had to prepare for the final blow. I walked toward the subway entrance where Sarah was waiting. Victoria would go back to that car, and she would look at Monica differently now. She would start asking questions, and when thieves start asking each other questions, the whole empire begins to crumble. I disappeared into the crowd, leaving my daughter sitting on the bench, holding a pen that was worth more than her promises, clutching a document that was worth less than the paper it was printed on. The panic in her eyes was the first real victory I had won in days. We retreated to a small, nondescript motel room on the outskirts of the city, a place Sarah had paid for in cash to keep us off the grid. The curtains were drawn tight against the fading light of the afternoon, casting the room in a dim yellow glow from the single bedside lamp. The air conditioner hummed with a rhythmic rattle masking the sound of sirens in the distance. Sarah sat at the small round table, her laptop opened the screen, illuminating her face with a blue, ghostly light. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching her fingers fly across the keyboard. We were not just looking for numbers anymore. We were hunting for the truth that would explain why my son had turned into a monster. "We need access to the root server," Sarah said without looking up. "Preston has firewalled the external accounts, but the legacy server, the one that houses the architectural archives and the deep financial history, is still running on the old mainframe. If I can get in there, I can backdoor into the current transaction logs. But I need the master admin password, the one from before the cloud migration." I closed my eyes, thinking back to a time when business was simpler, before algorithms and high-frequency trading, back when a handshake meant something. Preston would have changed the user passwords. He would have changed the Wi-Fi codes, but the root access key for the mainframe. He was too lazy to reprogram the entire core system. He would have assumed no one remembered it but him. "Try Catherine." 1980, I said softly. All caps, no spaces. Sarah typed it in. She hit enter. For a long, agonizing second, the screen remained black. Then a stream of green text cascaded down the monitor like a digital waterfall. "We are in," she whispered. "I have root access." She began to dig. I watched her expression shift from concentration to confusion and finally to absolute horror. Her eyes widened. She stopped typing and leaned back in her chair, her hand covering her mouth. "Oh my God," she breathed. "What is it?" I asked, standing up and moving to look over her shoulder. "Is he bankrupt? Is the hole deeper than 8 million? "It is not a hole, Harrison," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and professional disbelief. "It is a tunnel, and it goes straight to hell." She pointed to a series of transactions dating back 18 months. "Look at these inflows. 500,000, 2 million, 700,000. These are not payments from clients. These are deposits from shell companies in Panama and Cyprus." I squinted at the screen. The names meant nothing to me. Blue Horizon, Red Stone, Alpha Omega. "He is borrowing money," I suggested. "He is taking loans from offshore lenders to cover the payroll." No, Sarah said, shaking her head vigorously. "Loans have repayment schedules. Loans have interest rates. These are not loans. These are purchases. Look at the ledger. Bennett Steel is receiving these funds as payment for construction projects. Project Alpha in Nevada. Project Beta in Arizona." "We do not have projects in Nevada or Arizona," I said. "We are a Northeast regional developer." "Exactly," Sarah said. She opened another window, pulling up satellite imaging and property records. "I just cross-referenced the coordinates for these so-called construction sites. Look." On the screen was a satellite view of a patch of empty desert in Nevada. No steel, no concrete, just sand and scrub brush. "There is nothing there," I said. "That is the point," Sarah said. "It is ghost real estate. It is a classic money laundering scheme. Your son is taking dirty money from foreign criminal organizations, depositing it into Bennett Steel accounts, and generating fake invoices for construction work on land that is worthless or does not exist. He cleans the money through the company, pays the taxes on it to make it look legitimate, and then funnels it back out as consulting fees or vendor payments to the Cayman accounts we saw earlier. I felt the room spin. My knees hit the floor as I sat back down on the bed. Money laundering. My son was not just a bad businessman. He was a criminal. He was washing blood money through the company I built with my own hands. But why, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why risk everything? Because he lost the company's real money years ago, Sarah said, scrolling back through the timeline. He made bad bets on futures. He lost millions. He was terrified you would find out. So he went to a loan shark. And when he could not pay the shark introduced him to the whale. He is not running this, Harrison. He is working for them. He is their washer. And then she stopped scrolling. She froze. She looked at me, and the pity in her eyes was worse than the anger. Harrison, she said, there is something else. Something much worse. What could possibly be worse than this? She turned the laptop so I could see a document she had just opened. It was a draft of the asset transfer agreement, the one he tried to make me sign on Sunday. Look at the structure of the transfer, she said, pointing to paragraph 4. He is not asking you to resign. He is asking you to transfer your personal liquidity into the corporate operating account while remaining as the honorary chairman of the board with full fiduciary responsibility. I stared at the legal jargon. It was dense, intentionally confusing. What does that mean in plain English? I asked. It means he is setting you up, Sarah said. If you sign this, you pour your clean $52 million into the same pot as the dirty money. Once it mixes, it is impossible to separate. You become the primary financier of the operation. And because you retain the title of chairman, and you are injecting the capital when the FBI raids the place, and they will raid it, Harrison, the paper trail will stop at your desk. I felt a cold chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioner. He is not just stealing from me, I realized. No, Sarah said. He is building a patsy. He knows the feds are watching. He knows the walls are closing in. He needs someone to take the fall, someone with a clean record, someone who can be painted as a senile old man who got mixed up with the wrong people. He wants me to go to prison, I said. My own son wants me to die in a cell so he can walk away. Sarah nodded slowly. Under the RICO Act, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, the head of the organization takes the hardest hit. If you sign those papers, you become the head. You get 20 years minimum. Preston gets a plea deal for testifying against you. He claims he was just a dutiful son following his father's orders. He walks away with whatever money he has stashed in the Caymans, and you spend the rest of your life behind bars. I sat there in the dim light of the motel room and felt something inside me break. It was the last thread of hope, the last tiny belief that maybe this was all a misunderstanding, that maybe my son was just misguided. But this was cold. This was calculated. This was patricide by legal system. He sat by my bed when I had my heart surgery, I whispered. He held my hand. He was checking your pulse to see how much longer he had to wait, Sarah said ruthlessly. I looked at my hands. They were old hands spotted with age, but they were strong hands. Hands that had built skyscrapers. Hands that had held my wife while she died. And now they were hands that had raised a monster. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. Sarah closed the laptop. The blue light vanished, leaving us in the yellow gloom. This is not a family dispute anymore, Harrison, she said, her voice quiet but firm. This is not civil court. This is a federal criminal conspiracy. We have enough evidence right here to put him away for a very long time. But once I hand this over to my contact at the bureau, there is no going back. I looked up at her. This is a RICO case, she said. It destroys everything it touches. The company will be seized. The assets will be frozen. And your son, along with Monica and anyone else involved, will go to federal prison. There is no rehab for this. There is no second chance. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees, looking me straight in the eye. So I have to ask you, Harrison, and I need you to be sure. Do you want to put your son in prison? I looked at the wall where a cheap painting of a sailboat hung crookedly. I thought about the little boy who used to run to me when I came home from work. I thought about the teenager I taught to drive. I thought about the man who stood in my office and lied to my face. That man was dead. He died the moment he decided my life was the price for his freedom. I thought about Catherine, how she would weep if she were here. But Catherine was a woman of justice. She believed in right and wrong. She would not want me to be a martyr for a criminal. I took a deep breath. It rattled in my chest. He made his choice, I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. He chose money over his father. He chose a cage for me. I looked at Sarah. I nodded. Once. A sharp, definitive movement. Do it, I said. Burn it down. Sarah nodded back. She opened the laptop again. I will call Agent Miller, she said. He is the head of the Financial Crimes Division. He has been chasing this network for years. When he sees what we have, he will listen. She began to type. The sound of the keys was like the sound of nails being hammered into a coffin. I lay back on the hard mattress and stared at the water-stained ceiling. I had just signed my son's warrant. I had just destroyed my family. But for the first time in 3 days, I did not feel afraid. I felt cold. I felt empty. But I felt clean. Preston wanted a legacy. He was about to get one, a federal indictment number, and I was going to be the one to hand it to him. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled my nose as I lay back against the stiff hospital pillows. The room was dim, lit only by the rhythmic green glow of the cardiac monitor next to my bed. A plastic oxygen mask was strapped to my face, hissing softly with every breath I took. To anyone watching, I looked like a man on death's door. My skin was pale thanks to a little theatrical makeup Sarah had applied in the van. My hands rested on the white sheets, trembling with a calculated weakness. It was the performance of a lifetime staged in the private wing of St. Jude's Hospital, where the chief of cardiology, Dr. Evans, was not just a brilliant doctor, but my oldest friend from Vietnam. He had agreed to the charade without asking questions, knowing that sometimes the only way to save a life is to fake a death. I closed my eyes and waited. I did not have to wait long. The heavy wooden door to the suite did not creak open with the gentle caution of a worried family. It burst open. The sound of expensive heels clicking rapidly on the linoleum floor announced her arrival before I even saw her face. Monica, and behind her, the heavy, impatient footsteps of my son. They did not bring flowers. They did not bring a get-well card. They brought briefcases. Dad Preston's voice was sharp, cutting through the hum of the medical equipment. He did not sound relieved that I was alive. He sounded annoyed that I was inconveniencing his schedule. I opened my eyes slowly, letting my eyelids flutter as if the effort was immense. Preston. I wheezed, my voice muffled by the plastic mask. He stood at the foot of the bed, flanked by Monica and the shark-eyed lawyer Gareth. They looked like a firing squad lined up against a wall. Preston was checking his watch. He looked at the monitor, then at me. The doctor says it was a minor cardiac event, he said, dismissing my condition with a wave of his hand. Angina. Stress. You are fine. But this proves what we have been saying. You are too old for this stress. You need to let go. He signaled to Gareth. The lawyer stepped forward, placing a sleek leather briefcase on the rolling tray table usually reserved for hospital food. He clicked the latches open. The sound was like a gun cocking. He pulled out the document. The same one. The conservatorship. We need to do this now, Dad, Preston said, stepping closer. Before you have another episode, before you lose capacity completely, we cannot risk the company being leaderless if you drop dead tonight. I looked at him. My son. He was standing over his father's hospital bed, discussing my death as if it were a logistical hurdle in a supply chain. There was no fear in his eyes, no sorrow, just a cold, hard urgency. He needed that signature. The gambling debts, the shell companies, the impending audit, the wolves were nipping at his heels, and I was the only meat he had left to throw to them. I tried to lift my hand. I let it shake violently, the tremors rattling the plastic railing of the bed. I cannot, I stammered. My hand. Monica let out a huff of irritation. She stepped forward, pushing the lawyer aside. She grabbed my wrist. Her nails dug into my skin, sharp and painful. "Stop the drama, Harrison," she hissed. Her face was inches from mine. I could smell her perfume, cloying and expensive. It made me want to gag. "You are not having a seizure. You are just being difficult. Pick up the pen." She jammed a pen into my shaking fingers. She tried to force my hand down onto the paper. "Sign it," she commanded. "Sign it and get it over with. You are going to die anyway, old man. Whether it is today or next week, you are checking out. Do one useful thing before you go. Save your son. Save the family. Or do you want to die knowing you destroyed us?" The cruelty of her words hung in the air. It was naked, unfiltered. She did not even pretend to care anymore. She saw me as a corpse that had not yet stopped breathing, an obstacle that refused to be removed. I looked at Preston. I waited for him to defend me. I waited for him to tell his wife to take her hands off his dying father. He just stood there. He looked at me with eyes like ice. "She is right, Dad," he said softly. "You are making this hard. You are making this so unnecessarily hard. Just sign the damn paper so we can all go home. I have a meeting in an hour." A meeting. He was laundering money for criminals, and he was worried about his schedule. I let the pen slip from my fingers. It fell onto the sheets. I let my head roll back against the pillow. I gasped for air, making the monitor beep faster. I saw a flash of panic in Gareth's eyes. He did not want a witness to a coerced signature on a deathbed. "That was grounds for disbarment," Mr. Bennett, the lawyer, said nervously. "Perhaps we should wait until he is stabilized." "No," Monica snapped. "We do this now." I raised my hand, silencing them. I pulled the oxygen mask down an inch. I looked at Preston. I let a single tear roll down my cheek. It was acting, but the pain behind it was real. "I am tired, son," I whispered. "I am so tired." "Then sign," Preston said, leaning in. "End it." "I cannot sign like this," I said, my voice barely audible. "My hand, it will not work. And I want to do it right." "What do you mean?" Preston asked, suspicious. I took a deep, shuddering breath. "Friday," I whispered. "What about Friday?" Monica demanded. "The family meeting," I said. "At the company. In the boardroom. Where it started." Preston frowned. "Why Friday? Why not now?" "I need to say goodbye," I rasped. "To the company. To the legacy. Bring everyone. Victoria, Jason, the lawyers. I will sign everything. I promise. Just let me rest now. Let me gather my strength." Preston looked at Monica. She narrowed her eyes, scanning my face for any sign of deception. But all she saw was a frail, broken old man gasping for air in a hospital bed. She saw what she wanted to see. Defeat. "Friday morning," Preston said. 9 a.m. "If you are not there, Dad, If you try to run again, I swear to God I will have you declared incompetent by noon, and I will put you in the darkest facility I can find." I nodded weakly. "I will be there," I said. "I surrender." A slow smile spread across Preston's face. It was the smile of a predator who has finally clamped its jaws around the throat of its prey. He patted my leg. It was a patronizing, dismissive gesture. "Good choice, Dad," he said. "It is for the best. You will see. We will take good care of the money." He grabbed the briefcase. He signaled to Monica. They turned and walked out of the room without looking back. They did not say goodbye. They did not wish me well. They just marched out victorious, already spending the fortune they thought they had won. The door clicked shut. I lay there for a full minute, listening to their footsteps fade down the corridor. I listened until the silence returned to the room. Then I sat up. I pulled the oxygen mask off my face and tossed it onto the tray. I stopped the trembling in my hands. I reached for the glass of water on the bedside table and took a long, steady drink. Dr. Evans stepped out from the adjoining observation room. He looked pale. He had heard everything. "Harrison," he said quietly, "I knew your son was ambitious. I did not know he was soulless." "Money does strange things to weak men, Bob," I said, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. I stood up. I felt strong. The adrenaline was back cold and sharp. "You are really going to go there on Friday?" Dr. Evans asked. "You are going to walk into that room?" I walked to the closet and pulled out my suit. I began to dress. "Yes," I said. "I told him I would sign everything. And I will. But I am not signing a transfer of assets, Bob." I tied my tie. I looked at myself in the mirror. The old man was gone. The CEO was back. "I am signing a confession," I said. His confession. I grabbed my phone and texted Sarah. "It is done. The trap is set. Friday, 9 a.m. Tell Agent Miller to be ready." I walked out of the hospital room. I left the oxygen mask and the fake weakness behind. Preston thought he had won a fortune. He had no idea he had just invited the FBI to his own funeral. While I was playing the part of a dying man in a hospital bed, Sarah was walking into the lion's den. The federal building in downtown Manhattan was a fortress of concrete and glass, a place where careers were made and lives were dismantled. Sarah carried a heavy banker's box filled with the forensic evidence we had gathered. The guard at the security checkpoint scanned her badge and waved her through. She did not need an appointment. When you bring the head of the Financial Crimes Division, the kind of evidence we had, they clear their schedule. She was escorted to a corner office on the 12th floor. Special Agent Miller was waiting. He was a man carved out of granite, with a buzz cut, and eyes that had seen every type of white-collar rot imaginable. He did not smile. He pointed to the chair opposite his metal desk. Sarah placed the box on the desk and removed the lid. She did not say a word. She just started laying out the files. The ghost real estate in Nevada, the shell companies in Panama, the wire transfers to the Cayman Islands, and finally, the forged signature logs. Miller picked up the files one by one. He read fast. He was a hunter spotting tracks in the snow. He saw the patterns immediately. The structuring of deposits to avoid reporting thresholds. The layering of transactions to hide the source. It was a textbook money laundering operation, but executed with a scale and arrogance that was breathtaking. "This is a RICO case," Miller said, his voice a low rumble. "This is massive. We have been tracking some of these offshore accounts for months, but we could never link them to a domestic entity. You just handed us the missing link." "I am glad we could help," Sarah said calmly. Miller looked up from the file. "You are not helping Ms. Jenkins. You are informing. There is a difference. Who is the architect?" "Preston Bennett," Sarah said. "And his wife Monica." Miller nodded. He reached for his phone. I am authorizing a raid. We will hit the offices and the residence within the hour. We will freeze every asset associated with Bennett Steele and arrest everyone named in these files. No, Sarah said sharply. She placed her hand over the phone. Not yet. Miller narrowed his eyes. Excuse me. This is an active federal investigation now. You do not dictate the timeline. We have conditions, Sarah said. Conditions? Miller laughed, a dry, harsh bark. You are handing me a criminal enterprise wrapped in a bow, and you want conditions. Sarah pulled out her cell phone. She dialed a number and put it on speaker. Harrison, she said. You are on with Agent Miller. I was sitting in the back of the Ford truck parked a few blocks away from the hospital. I leaned close to the burner phone. Agent Miller, I said, my voice steady. If you raid the company today, you will lose the case. Miller leaned over Sarah's phone. Who is this? This is Harrison Bennett, I said. The man whose name is on every one of those fraudulent contracts. Miller paused. Mr. Bennett, according to these files, you are the primary signatory. If I arrest your son today, I am arresting you too. You are the CEO. The buck stops with you. That is exactly why you need to wait, I said. My son has spent 6 months building a paper trail to frame me. He has forged my digital signature. He has routed the money through accounts that look like mine. If you arrest us both today, his lawyers will argue that he was just a dutiful son following his father's orders. He will cut a deal. He will testify against me. And because I am the chairman, I will take the fall. You will put an innocent man in prison, and the real criminal will walk away with a suspended sentence. Miller was silent. He knew I was right. It was the oldest trick in the corporate playbook. Blame the old man. So what do you propose, Mr. Bennett? Miller asked, his tone shifting from dismissive to intrigued. I am offering you a confession, I said. A verbal, unambiguous confession. Recorded live. How? There is a meeting on Friday, I said. A family meeting. Preston thinks I am coming to sign over my assets. He thinks I am beaten. He thinks I am senile. He will be arrogant. He will be careless. If I can get him to admit on tape that he set up the shell companies, that he forged the signatures, and that he is doing this to launder money for the cartel, then you have him. You have him dead to rights. Miller tapped his pen on the desk. That is high risk. If he suspects anything, he destroys the digital keys and the money vanishes. He won't suspect anything I said. He thinks he has already won. He thinks he is talking to a corpse. And what do you want in exchange? Miller asked. Immunity, I said. Total immunity for me and for my daughter Victoria, who was coerced into this. And I want my personal assets protected. The $52 million I made before my son turned criminal. That money is clean. It stays with me. You can seize the company. You can seize the illegal profits. But what I built with my own hands stays mine. Miller looked at Sarah, then at the phone. He was calculating the odds. A guaranteed conviction of a major money launderer versus the risk of a botched raid. We can do a proffer agreement, Miller said slowly. Limited immunity based on the value of the intel. But we need the confession. The paper trail is too muddy. Juries get confused by forensic accounting. They need to hear the bad guy say I did it. I will get it, I promised. You will have to wear a wire, Miller said. A high-fidelity device. And we will need tactical teams in the building, disguised as building maintenance. If this goes sideways, if he realizes what you are doing, you are in a room with a desperate man who owes money to very bad people. Your safety is not guaranteed. I am not asking for safety, I said. I am asking for justice. There was a long silence on the line. I could hear the hum of the ventilation system in the FBI office. I could hear Sarah's breathing. Okay, Miller said finally. We do it your way. Friday morning. We will wire you up at 0800. But Mr. Bennett, I need to be clear about something. Go ahead. Once we execute this warrant, once we storm that room, there is no turning back. Your son will be charged with money laundering, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The mandatory minimum is 20 years. He will likely die in prison or come out an old man. This is your flesh and blood. Are you sure you can do this? Are you sure you want to be the one who locks the door on him? I looked out the window of the truck at the gray city street. I thought about the hospital room. I thought about Preston standing over me, waiting for me to sign away my life so he could cover his crimes. I thought about the look in his eyes, cold and devoid of any love. I thought about the years I spent building a future for him, the schools, the cars, the opportunities. I had given him everything, and in return, he had sold me out. He is not my son anymore. Agent Miller, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than a scream in the quiet office. He is a stranger who wears my son's face. The boy I raised would never have done this. The man who walked out of my hospital room an hour ago killed the father in me. He buried him. Now I am just the witness. Miller exhaled a long breath. All right, he said. We will have the papers drawn up. Sarah, bring him in tomorrow for the briefing. Do not be late. I hung up the phone. The screen went black. I sat there in the silence of the truck, feeling the weight of the decision settle onto my shoulders. It was heavy, heavier than steel. But it was necessary. Sarah came out of the building 15 minutes later. She climbed into the truck and looked at me. She did not smile. She did not offer empty words of comfort. She knew what this cost. It is set, she said. Good, I said, starting the engine. Where to now, she asked. To the tailor, I said, staring straight ahead. If I am going to send my son to hell, I am going to wear my best suit to do it. The hospital room was a tomb of silence, broken only by the rhythmic beep of the cardiac monitor and the relentless drumming of rain against the windowpane. It was 2 a.m. The nurses' station down the hall was quiet, the night shift settling into their routine of charting and coffee. I lay still in the bed, my eyes closed, my breathing shallow and regulated. I was supposed to be sedated, recovering from the heart attack that never happened. But my mind was wide awake, racing through the permutations of the coming day. Friday was hours away. The trap was set. The FBI was ready. Then the door creaked open. It was not the soft, professional entrance of a nurse coming to check my vitals. It was clumsy, heavy. I heard a stumble, then the distinct sound of a body catching itself against the doorframe. The smell hit me a second later. It was thick and cloying, cutting through the antiseptic air. Scotch. Expensive aged single malt consumed in quantities that would fell a lesser man. Preston. He shuffled into the room, breathing heavily through his mouth. I heard the scrape of the visitor's chair being dragged across the linoleum floor. It stopped right beside my bed. I felt the mattress dip slightly as he leaned his weight against the railing. I kept my eyes shut. I kept my breathing even. To him, I was just a sleeping old man, a fading relic. Dad, he whispered. His voice was thick with drink slurred around the edges. Dad, are you in there? I did not move. I did not respond. He let out a long, shuddering sigh. It sounded like a sob caught in his throat. I am sorry, he said. I really am. I did not want it to be like this. I wanted to be the hero, Dad. I wanted to show you I could do it, that I could be the big man. He took a pull from something, probably a flask he had sneaked in. I heard the liquid slosh and the sharp intake of breath that followed. But I messed up, he continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I messed up bad. These guys, Dad, they are not like the union reps you used to deal with. They do not yell. They do not strike. They just smile and tell you exactly how they are going to peel the skin off your bones. I lay there stone still, while my heart hammered against my ribs. He was talking about the cartel, the people he had sold his soul to. They said they would kill me, Dad, he whimpered. Not just kill me. They said they would hurt Monica. They would hurt Victoria. They said they would make it last for days. I was so scared. I am still scared. I cannot sleep. I cannot eat. Every time my phone rings, I think it is the end. I felt a flash of pity. It was an instinct, a biological reflex of a father hearing his child in pain. But then he continued, and the pity turned into something cold and hard, like ice forming in my veins. That is why you have to do this, he said. You have to sign Dad. You have to take the fall. My breath hitched, but I masked it with a snore. You are old, he reasoned, his voice gaining a pathetic sort of momentum. You had a great life. You built the towers. You made the millions. You traveled. You loved Mom. You did it all. What do you have left? 5 years, maybe 10. And look at you. Your heart is failing. Your mind is going. He reached out and touched my hand. His palm was sweaty, clammy. It felt repulsive. I have my whole life ahead of me, Dad, he pleaded to my sleeping face. I am 38. I have a wife. I might have kids one day. I cannot go to prison. I cannot die in a federal cell. I am not strong like you. I would not last a week in there. They would eat me alive. He squeezed my hand. But you, he said, you are Harrison Bennett. You are the Iron Man. You could handle it. You could go in there and hold your head high. You could be the martyr. The audacity of it took my breath away. He was not asking for forgiveness. He was asking for a sacrifice. He was asking me to trade my remaining years, my freedom, my good name, so he could continue living a lie. You always said family comes first, he whispered, his voice breaking. Do you remember? When I was little and I broke the neighbor's window. You paid for it. You said Bennetts protect their own. You said a father sacrifices for his son. That is the job. That is the legacy. I remembered. I remembered teaching him about responsibility, about owning up to your mistakes. He had twisted those lessons into a noose and was trying to hang me with them. He was using my love, my code of honor, as a weapon against me. So please, Dad, he said, tears now evident in his voice. Just sign the papers on Friday. Take the blame. Tell them you authorized the transfers. Tell them you set up the shell companies. Tell them I was just a good son following orders. They will believe you. You are the CEO. And if you do that, these bad men, they go away. The debt is paid, and I get to live. He leaned his forehead against the railing, sobbing quietly. It is the only way, Dad. You have to save me. One last time. Be my hero one last time. I listened to him cry. I listened to the selfish, self-pitying sobs of a man who had never learned to stand on his own 2 feet. And in that moment, lying in the dark hospital room, the last ember of affection I held for him flickered and died. It did not go out with a bang. It went out with a whimper, just like him. He was not just a criminal. He was a coward. A weak, pathetic coward who would throw his own father into the fire to keep himself warm. He did not love me. He did not respect me. He saw me as an expendable resource, a shield to be discarded when it was battered and broken. He pulled himself together, sniffing loudly. He wiped his face on his sleeve. Goodbye, Dad, he whispered. I will see you on Friday. I love you. He did not love me. He loved what I could do for him. He stood up, the chair scraping again. He stumbled toward the door. I heard the latch click. I heard his heavy footsteps receding down the hall. I opened my eyes. The room was the same. The rain was still falling. The monitor was still beeping, but the world had changed. I sat up. I felt strong, stronger than I had felt in years. It was the strength of absolute clarity. There was no confusion anymore, no hesitation, no guilt. My son had walked into this room and killed the father in me. He had buried Harrison, the dad, and in doing so, he had woken up Harrison, the CEO, the man who destroyed competition, the man who showed no mercy to those who tried to cheat him. I reached for the burner phone on the bedside table. My hand was steady as a rock. I typed the message to Sarah. It was short. It was final. He was here. He confessed. He wants me to be the martyr. I paused, then typed the command that would seal his fate. Activate. Zero tolerance. Make sure the agents are in the walls. I want him to see my face when the cuffs go on. I hit send. I lay back down, but I did not sleep. I stared at the ceiling, visualizing the boardroom, visualizing the look on Preston's face when the door opened. He wanted a hero. He wanted a sacrifice. He was going to get justice, and it was going to be the coldest, hardest thing he ever felt. Tomorrow was Friday. Tomorrow was Judgment Day, and I was the judge. Friday morning arrived with a sky the color of bruised iron hanging low over the city. I stood outside the double doors of the boardroom on the 40th floor, the same place where this nightmare had begun less than a week ago. My reflection in the glass panel was sharp. I was not wearing the hospital gown or the wrinkled clothes of a fugitive. I was wearing my charcoal Italian wool suit, the one I had worn to ring the opening bell at the stock exchange 10 years ago. My tie was a deep crimson silk tied in a perfect Windsor knot. My shoes were polished to a mirror shine. I did not look like a man who had suffered a heart attack 2 days ago. I looked like the man who built this building. I pushed the doors open and stepped inside. The conversation in the room died instantly. They were all there just as I had requested. Preston sat at the head of the table in my chair. Monica was to his right, scrolling on her phone with a bored expression. Victoria and Jason sat huddled together on the left, looking like two people waiting for a firing squad. And Gareth, the shark lawyer, was arranging documents with precise, predatory movements. When they saw me, silence slammed into the room. Preston's jaw actually dropped. He half rose from the chair, his eyes scanning me from head to toe, looking for the oxygen tank, looking for the wheelchair, looking for the frailty he had seen in the hospital bed. It was not there. "Dad," he stammered, "you look better." I walked to the other end of the table. I did not sit. I placed my hands on the mahogany surface and leaned forward. "I feel better, son," I said, my voice booming in the quiet room. "Amazing what a little rest can do." Monica narrowed her eyes. She did not like this. She sensed the shift in the atmosphere immediately. "Let us not waste time, Harrison," she said, snapping her phone shut. "We have a schedule. The doctors are waiting at the facility to process your admission after the signing." "Ah, yes," I said. "The facility. For my own good." Gareth slid the thick leather binder down the length of the table. It stopped inches from my hands. "The papers are ready, Mr. Bennett," the lawyer said smoothly. "Transfer of assets, power of attorney, and the voluntary admission forms. Just sign at the tabs and we can conclude this unfortunate chapter." I opened the binder. I looked at the pages. It was a masterpiece of legal theft. It gave Preston control of everything. The cash, the properties, the voting rights. It even gave him the power to decide when I could brush my teeth. It was a death certificate for a living man. I looked up. I caught Victoria's eye. She was trembling. She knew what I knew. Shh. She knew about the Cayman accounts. She knew about the shell companies. But she was terrified of the man sitting next to her, whose debts were due at noon. She looked down, unable to hold my gaze. I looked at Jason. He was sweating. He kept checking his watch. He did not care about me. He only cared about his fingers. I looked at Monica. Pure, unadulterated greed. She was already mentally decorating the Hamptons' house she had stolen. And finally, I looked at Preston. My son. The boy who cried in my hospital room. The man who was willing to send me to prison to save himself. I have one question before I sign, I said. Preston sighed impatiently. What is it, Dad? I want to hear it from you, I said. Not from the lawyers. Not from your wife, from you. Look me in the eye and tell me, is this really what you want? Do you really want to strip your father of his dignity, his home, and his freedom? Is this how you want to be remembered? Preston straightened his tie. He looked around the room looking for courage from his accomplices. He found it in Monica's glare. It is not about what I want, Dad, he said, his voice taking on that rehearsed corporate tone. It is about what is necessary. You are sick. You are making bad decisions. We are protecting the legacy. We are doing this because we love you. Love, I repeated. The word tasted like ash. I turned to Victoria. And you, Vicky, I asked softly. You know the truth. You know what is happening here. Do you want this? Do you want to do this to your father? Victoria made a small, choked sound. She looked at Preston, who shot her a warning glare that was cold enough to freeze water. She looked at Jason, who squeezed her hand so hard his knuckles were white. I am sorry, Dad, she whispered, tears leaking from her eyes. We have to. There is no other choice. No other choice, I said, nodding slowly. I turned to Monica. And you, I said. Just sign the damn paper, old man, she spat out. Stop dragging this out. You lost. Accept it. Go to the nursing home and rot quietly. We have a company to run. I looked at them. The tableau of my failure as a father. I had raised wolves and sheep, and both were trying to eat me. I closed the binder. I did not pick up the pen. You are right, I said. I did lose. I lost the moment I thought I could build a dynasty on a foundation of money instead of character. I lost when I gave you everything you wanted instead of what you needed. Preston stood up. Enough of this speech. Sign the papers, or I call the orderlies right now to drag you out of here. I smiled. It was the smile I used when a competitor walked into a trap I had set months ago. You are in such a rush, Preston, I said. You always were. You never had the patience to read the fine print. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the Mont Blanc pen, the one I had stabbed into the table on Sunday. I held it up. You brought a lot of people to make sure one old man signs a piece of paper, I said. I pointed the pen at them, counting slowly. 1. Gareth the lawyer. 2. Jason the gambler. 3. Victoria the pawn. 4. Monica the mastermind. 5. Preston the traitor. You are a lot of people against one senior citizen, I said. My voice dropping to a conversational level. You brought your lawyers. You brought your muscle. You brought your family. You think you have the numbers. You think you are strong because there are 5 of you and only 1 of me. Preston sneered. We are strong, Dad. We have the law. We have the medical reports. We have the power. You are alone. You have always been alone. I looked at the digital clock on the wall. It clicked to 9:15. Funny thing is, I said, looking Preston dead in the eye, I only brought 1 person too. Preston frowned. What? I tossed the pen onto the table. It slid across the wood and stopped right in front of him. I did not sign your papers, son, I said. But I did sign something this morning. I signed a proffer agreement with the United States Department of Justice. The color drained from Preston's face so fast, it looked like he had been slapped. "What did you do?" he whispered. And then the heavy double doors of the boardroom behind me did not just open. They were thrown open with a force that shook the walls. Preston jumped. Monica screamed. Gareth dropped his briefcase. Sarah Jenkins walked in first, holding a stack of files. She looked at me and nodded. But she was not alone. Behind her, filling the doorway with blue windbreakers and tactical gear, were 6 federal agents. The man in the lead stepped forward. He had a badge on his belt and a warrant in his hand. Preston Bennett, Agent Miller, barked his voice, filling the room with the authority of the federal government. "Step away from the table and put your hands where I can see them." The silence that followed was not the silence of tension. It was the silence of a guillotine blade falling. The trap had snapped, and the rats were finally caught. The room erupted into absolute chaos. It was a blur of motion and noise that shattered the sterile corporate atmosphere of the boardroom. Uniformed agents poured through the double doors like a blue tide, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of shouted commands. "Federal agents, nobody move. Hands where we can see them. Keep your hands on the table." Preston scrambled backward, his chair toppling over with a loud crash. He looked like a cornered rat, his eyes darting from the agents to me, unable to comprehend that his carefully constructed kingdom was collapsing in real time. Before he could even stammer a protest, 2 agents were on him. They grabbed his arms, twisting them behind his back with practiced efficiency. My son, the man who thought he was untouchable, was slammed chest first onto the mahogany table he had coveted for so long. The sound of the air leaving his lungs was audible. "Get off me! Do you know who I am? I am the CEO!" Preston screamed, his face pressed against the polished wood. "You are under arrest for money laundering, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit racketeering." Agent Miller announced, his voice cutting through the noise like a knife. He pulled a pair of steel handcuffs from his belt. The metallic ratchet sound as they tightened around Preston's wrists was the loudest sound I had ever heard. Monica was on her feet, backing away toward the window, her face twisted into a mask of pure fury. She pointed a shaking finger at me. "You did this. You old bastard. You set us up. You were supposed to be dying." "Sit down, ma'am," an agent barked, moving toward her. She lunged at me, her manicured claws reaching for my face, screaming obscenities that would make a sailor blush. She did not look like a socialite anymore. She looked like a wild animal. 2 agents intercepted her before she could reach me. They spun her around. She shrieked as the cuffs went on thrashing and kicking, her expensive heels scraping against the floor. "You cannot do this. My mother will sue you. I want my lawyer." "Your lawyer is a little busy right now," I said calmly, looking toward the corner of the room. Gareth, the shark in the gray suit, was trying to make himself invisible. He had quietly closed his briefcase and was inching toward the side exit, trying to slip away in the confusion. He almost made it to the door. "Going somewhere, counselor?" Agent Miller asked, stepping into his path. Gareth froze. "I am merely legal counsel. I am not involved in the operations of this company. I am leaving. You are named as a co-conspirator in the indictment," Miller said, blocking his way. "We have your signature on the Cayman Island shell accounts. You are not going anywhere except federal custody." Gareth slumped. The arrogance drained out of him instantly. He held out his hands, defeated. I looked over at Victoria and Jason. They were huddled in their chairs, terrified. Jason was pale, sweating profusely, looking at the door, as if he expected his bookie to walk in next. Victoria was hyperventilating. She looked at Preston being hauled up from the table, then at Monica screaming, then at me. The reality of what she had been part of, the sheer scale of the disaster, finally hit her. Her eyes rolled back in her head, and she slumped sideways, fainting dead away onto the carpet. Jason didn't even try to catch her. He was too busy putting his hands on his head, surrendering to an agent who had not even spoken to him yet. Preston was hauled to his feet. His tie was crooked, his hair messed up, his face red with exertion and rage. He looked at me with wild, desperate eyes. This is a mistake. You have no proof. It is all circumstantial. You cannot prove I knew about the source of the money. I will fight this. I will bury you in court." Sarah Jenkins stepped forward. She held a small digital recorder in her hand. She did not shout. She simply pressed a button and turned the volume up. The room went silent as the audio played. It was the recording from the hospital room the night before. Preston's drunken, slurred voice filled the boardroom, clear and damning. "I messed up bad, Dad. These guys, they are not like the union reps. I owe bad people money. You have to take the fall. Just sign the papers. Tell them you authorize the transfers. Be the martyr." Preston's face went white. The blood drained from his cheeks so fast I thought he might faint like his sister. He stared at the recorder, then at me. The realization that I had been awake, that I had listened to him beg me to go to prison for him, shattered him. That is inadmissible," Gareth shouted weakly from the corner, desperate to earn his fee, even in handcuffs. "That was recorded without consent." "Actually," Agent Miller said, smiling for the first time, "Mr. Bennett was acting as a cooperating witness under federal supervision. That recording is perfectly legal, and it is the nail in your coffin." The agents began to move them out. It was a parade of the damned. Gareth's head hung low. Monica still spitting venom, her eyes full of hate. Jason weeping softly. Victoria being helped to her feet by a medic sobbing into her hands. And then Preston. As the agents dragged him past me, he stopped struggling. He looked at me. The rage was gone, replaced by a terrified, childlike realization that his life was over. He looked at the father he had tried to destroy, and he played his last card. The card he thought would always work. "Dad!" He screamed, his voice cracking. "Dad, what are you doing? Stop them, please! I am your son! You cannot let them take me! I am your flesh and blood!" "Dad." I stood there, my hands resting on the back of the chair. I looked at him. I looked for the little boy I used to know. I looked for the young man who graduated with honors. I looked for the executive I had mentored. I did not see them. I only saw a coward. A man who would steal from his father and then beg for mercy when he got caught. I reached up and straightened my silk tie. I smoothed the lapel of my suit. I looked him dead in the eye, my gaze steady and dry. I did not raise a coward who frames his father. I said, my voice low, but carrying the weight of a final judgment. Preston sobbed, his knees buckling. "Goodbye, Preston," I said. The agents pushed him through the doors. His wails echoed down the hallway, mixing with Monica's screams, until the elevator doors dinged and swallowed them whole. The boardroom was quiet. Empty chairs, scattered papers, the fountain pen lying on the table. Sarah walked over to me. She placed a hand on my arm. "It is over, Harrison," she said softly. I looked around the room. The empire I built. It would be tied up in litigation for years. The brand was tarnished. The assets were frozen. "Yes," I said. "It is over." 1 month later. The morning sun filtered through the bay windows of my kitchen in the Hamptons. The house was quiet. The locks had been changed back. The security codes were mine again. The silence was not heavy anymore. It was peaceful. I sat at the small kitchen table, a cup of coffee steaming in front of me. On the table sat a single piece of paper. A check. It was drawn on my personal account, the funds finally unfrozen by the court after the grand jury indictment. The amount was written in bold black ink. $52 million. It was everything. The real estate sales, the liquidated stocks, the cash reserves. Every penny I had protected from Preston. Every penny I had built over a lifetime. Across from me sat the dean of the state university. He was staring at the check, his hands trembling slightly. He looked like he wanted to touch it, but was afraid it might disappear. "You are sure about this, Mr. Bennett?" he asked, his voice hushed with reverence. This is the largest single donation in the history of the university. The Catherine Bennett School of Engineering. It will change thousands of lives." "I am sure," I said. I picked up my pen. Not the gold Mont Blanc. I had left that in the boardroom. Just a simple ballpoint pen. I signed my name at the bottom. Harrison Bennett. I slid the check across the table. "My children wanted this money," I said, looking out the window at the ocean. "They destroyed themselves for it. They destroyed our family for it. It is cursed. I do not want it." "But the students," the dean stammered. "The students will build things," I said. "They will build bridges. They will build towers. They will build a future. That is a better legacy than a trust fund for a felon." The dean left a few minutes later, clutching the check to his chest like a holy relic. I walked out onto the patio. The air was salty and cold. I took a sip of my coffee. Preston was in a holding cell, denied bail, facing 20 years. Monica was negotiating a plea deal that would leave her penniless. Victoria was in therapy, working 2 jobs to pay off the debts I had refused to cover. She was learning the hard way, but she was learning. I was alone. My wife was gone. My son was gone. My fortune was gone. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the sea air. For the first time in months, for the first time since Catherine died, the knot in my chest loosened. I was 70 years old. I had nothing but this house and my pension. I smiled. It was a small, sad smile, but it was real. I was free. The burden was gone. I had survived the trap. I had fought the war. And in the end, I had kept the only thing that mattered. My name. I raised my coffee cup to the sky. "Here is to you, Catherine," I whispered. We finally cleaned house. But cleaning house leaves empty rooms. The silence in the estate was heavy at first. I spent days walking through the halls, realizing how small a man can feel in a big house without his family. But slowly, life began to fill the cracks. 3 months later, I drove my old truck to a small bakery on the edge of town. I stood outside the window watching. Inside, Victoria was wiping tables. She looked exhausted. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun, and her apron was stained with flour. She was not the socialite anymore. She was a worker. I saw her drop a tray of pastries. The old Victoria would have cried and blamed someone else. This Victoria just sighed, knelt down, and cleaned it up. I walked in. When she saw me, she froze. She did not ask for help. She did not ask for a loan. She just poured me a cup of black coffee and said it was on the house. I drank it at the counter. It was the best coffee I had tasted in years because it was honest. I left a $100 bill under the saucer and walked out. She did not chase me. She did not call. She just kept working. I drove away knowing that while I had lost a son to greed, I might have saved a daughter through discipline. That night, Sarah called me. The new CEO of Bennett Steel had turned the company around. The stock was stabilizing. The employees were safe. The legacy was not the name on the building. It was the fact that 500 families still had jobs because I had the courage to cut out the cancer. I sat on my porch listening to the waves crashing against the cliffs. For the first time, I did not feel like a victim of my own success. I felt like a man who had survived a storm and found solid ground. This ordeal taught me that blood is biology, but loyalty is a choice. I spent decades building an empire to secure my children's future, never realizing I was funding their corruption. The hardest thing a parent can do is stop protecting their child from the consequences of their own actions. My legacy isn't the $52 million anymore. It's the integrity I refuse to compromise. Money can buy houses and lawyers, but it cannot buy a clean conscience. Sometimes you have to lose your family to find your freedom. If you believe that justice should always come before blood, Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Tell me in the comments below, did I go too far by sending Preston to prison, or did he get exactly what he deserved? I want to hear your thoughts.